afternoon to all present here. My team and I are here to inculcate the knowledge and the intricate workings of the function and its processes with reference to language regions in the brain. This is Mahadia here, and I will be taking you on a journey towards postmortem examinations. Zahra will drive you through EEG, and Zainab will take you through fMRI. Hajar will enhance the presentation with the Broca's and Wernicke's areas. Last but not the least, Fazana will conclude us with an outstanding outline of the overall presentation. So please do feel free to ask questions towards the latter part of our presentation. So as we all understand what a brain can do, right? Its significance, its importance. But now I'll be talking a few words based on the importance of the language regions in the brain, what it can do, what it impacts to us. By studying the language areas of the brain, the researchers are able to gain an immense amount of insight. How the brain processes, how it functions, the segments of it. This can help in better understanding and comprehension towards the main significance understanding with reference to diseases such as dyslexia and aphasia. Meanwhile, now I will talk a few words based on the role of postmortem examinations. We all do understand the rough understanding of what postmortem is, but I will drive you through a few words on what this role is about. This is the postmortem examination provides a unique opportunity towards the study of the brain structure, its function in each individuals who have passed away. Where it also, on the other hand, allows detailed investigations of language-related regions and segments. This also, on the other hand, analyzes researchers to identify specific neural pathways and connections that are involved in language processing. Now I would like to speak to you with reference to advantages of the postmortem examinations relating to the language-related regions. So as we all understand what a postmortem is, now we will discuss the pros of it. This brings us towards the understanding of how a postmortem examination is a detailed analysis of a microscopic viewpoint of how brain tissue provides providing insights with reference to cellular and molecular mechanisms. On the other hand, we also understand the localization of functions, where the researchers will be able to understand the specified segment that is connected to the language regions to each output of the processing of the brain. Meanwhile, we also understand that the postmortem examination enables the researchers to conduct a longitudinal perspective by comparing individuals with a language disorder versus without a language disorder. So this is a very convenient method to use. Meanwhile, with to that, we understand there are a few disadvantages as well. So now I will take you through the cons that we have to discuss with reference to this form of examination, this form of methods of studying the brain. Where this postmortem examination, though it also has pros, we also understand that it also has cons, where it is very limited in sample size. Where the limitation of the variability, which can restrict not only to the close ones, but also to researchers with relatability towards their study faculty and all that, because they do not have the wide availability towards that platform. On the other hand, this postmortem is based on only internal brain segmental features, where it can affect the quality of tissues, where it can also affect the quality of tissue samples, and also therefore hence it would also create a drawback with reference to study results. Last but not the least, I would like to enhance you all on a brief understanding of cadaver research, where we also understand how this is an understanding of the language processing. It brings out a study of the physical structure of the brain, including the Broca's and the Wernicke's areas, respectively. Meanwhile, through this research, it takes us through the neural pathways where it involves language functions. Now, I will pass it on to my colleague Zahra to speak a few words on EEG. Thank you.
Thank you, Mahdaya. So now let us look into the role of the EEG method in studying the brain's language-related areas. So to begin with, let us have a brief introduction as to what is an EEG method. So the EEG method is considered to be a great tool in studying the human brain. It was initiated in 19th century when the scientists discovered that the brain generates electrical activity. So this method measures the electrical activity of the brain by placing up to 34 electrodes on the human scalp. So this is also considered to be a typical or a specific method in understanding the temporal dynamics of the brain. Thus, it is used to measure the brain's language processing by analyzing the electrical activity of the brain, especially associated with linguistic tasks. So moving on to the advantages of this method. This method provides excellent temporal resolution, meaning they can capture rapid changes in the brain milliseconds after a word is spoken, written or heard by an individual. And also this method can capture event-related potentials in the sense that they can identify specific electrical patterns of the brain due to pertaining to different events. This which helps the researchers to understand how the brain responds to different stimuli of the environment. For an example, if an N400 reading of the EEG is observed, it interprets the fact that a particular word is incompetent with its preceding context. And also it is considered to be a non-invasive method, but it is safe for infants, toddlers, children and even clinical patients since it does not require a surgery or an insertion of any electrode. And also it is considered a cost-effective method where language researchers can use this method for larger language researchers. And lastly, it is also considered an important method to identify specific regions responsible for language discrimination. This is based on the position of the electrodes in different places. It is based on the placement of electrodes based on different positions in on the scalp of the human brain. So it has also revealed that this specific region of the brain responsible for language discrimination is the frontal lobe, and it has shed light to the fact that individuals with bilingual abilities, they possess complex EEG signals compared to monolingual individuals. So that shows the level of cognition in different individuals. So moving on to the disadvantages of the method is that the first aspect is that they are poor in providing spatial resolutions, meaning certain, this method has limitations in terms of identifying or pinpointing exactly where certain activities of the brain takes place due to the signals not being clear or detailed enough. Also, due to this particular factor, it has limitations in localization factors in the sense of identifying localization aspects of the Wernicke's and Broca's areas. Also, it has signal inferences in the sense this method, movements can interrupt the EEG signals, and this is due to the incapability of the EEG method in distinguishing between neural activity and motor activity. Next, it also has limitations in the depth of recording, since the EEG method cannot record internal structures, and therefore understanding the syntactic and semantic processing of the brain could be a challenging task of the EEG method. So due to all these limitations, this method required to combine with other methods such as fMRI, MEG and even PET scans to get a comprehensive understanding of the brain. Therefore, researchers need to observe both pros and cons in order to incorporate this method in their researches. So now I would like to assign the rest of the remaining of next part of our presentation to Zainab, who will be joining online. Thank you.
The role of the fMRI in studying the language-related areas of the brain. The transition from EEG, MRI to fMRI has significantly expanded our understanding of brain function. Firstly, I would like to give a brief introduction on fMRI, which stands for Functional Magnetic Resonance Imaging. Firstly, MRI was developed in 1970s as a non-invasive imaging technique, which was developed in 1970s, during which the scientists found out the changes in blood flow level and oxygenation levels could be used to detect the brain's activity, which formed the basis of fMRI. Thus, it was developed in 1990s. It plays a crucial role in the field of neuroscience research and cognitive psychology in terms of brain activity and brain mapping, memory retrieval, and many more. Next, let's move on to the next slide and have a look at the discoveries made by fMRI. fMRI has led to numerous discoveries in the field of language associated with language processing in real time. Firstly, localization of language functions. Their studies have found out that there are specific regions of the brain related to language, such as Broca's and Wernicke's area. Secondly, it has also helped in mapping complex networks of the brain related to different aspects of language processing, such as syntax processing, semantics, pragmatics, and phonological processing, and how these different regions of the brain collaborate to give a comprehensive understanding of the production of the language and comprehension. Thirdly, it has provided an insight on the underlying neural mechanism of bilingualism and language control. It has also contributed to our understanding of the language development of children and specific disorders such as SLI, aphasia, and dyslexia, by comparing the neural activity of a normal individual and that of a person with specific disorder. It has also shed light on the neuroplasticity and the role of language learning. Further, the procedure that follows soon after a language-related injury. Last but not the least, it has also elucidated us in speech perception and production. Further, how the brain processes auditory information, generate articulatory movements during speech production, and recognition of phonics. Next, I would like to talk about a few advantages and disadvantages of fMRI. First, let's take a look at the advantages. It's non-invasive due to the fact that it doesn't cause any harm to the participant during investigations. Secondly, it offers an excellent spatial resolution as it facilitates the researchers to pinpoint on a specific region of the brain related to language with high accuracy. Thirdly, while not as high as its spatial resolution, it offers a decent temporal resolution to monitor the rapid changes of the brain's activity. Lastly, as I specified before, it does specify on the localization of language functions. Next, let's take a look at the disadvantages of fMRI. It offers indirect measures because it relies on the oxygenation levels and blood flows, where the readings might sometimes be incorrect, which would lead to misinterpretation of results. Secondly, the moderate temporal resolution is insufficient for the researchers to monitor the rapid dynamics of the neural activity over time. Thirdly, the cost of equipment are expensive to purchase and maintain, which would lead to less accessibility. And finally, it causes participant constraints due to the fact that it requires the participant to rely on a confined space for an extended period of time, which would lead to discomfort for participants and anxiety. Thank you. Next, I would like to pass it on to Hajar to provide you an insightful understanding on Broca's area and Wernicke's area. Thank you.
Thank you, Zaina. So, my colleagues went on and on about this brain study method and that brain study method. But how is that relevant to us personally as language students? Well, I'll expand on that in a few minutes. So, in April of 1861, a 51-year-old man named Louis Victor Wagner was admitted into the surgical unit of a young physician by the name of Paul Pierre Broca. The reason behind his hospital visit was due to a severe liver infection, but that's not what caught Broca's attention. It was the fact that he also possessed a very, very unique disorder at that time. So conversations with the man led Broca to discover that Wagner could understand other people pretty well, but it was just that he couldn't speak as fluently. In fact, the only expression that he was capable of uttering at that time was the word tan. So then, after Wagner died, Broca performed an autopsy and he discovered something really, really shocking. He found a lesion, a damaged area in the frontal lobe, and that made Broca make his famous statement, "We speak with the left hemisphere." And we identified for the very first time the existence of a language center in a portion of the frontal lobe. So then, since then, we know that damage to certain areas of the brain lead to specific language deficits or aphasias. The location in which the Wagner's lesion was located is now called the Broca's area, which is vital for speech production. And consequently, the damage to that particular area is known as Broca's aphasia. So what exactly does Broca's aphasia entail? Broca's aphasia, also known as smooth aphasia, is a specific speech and language problem. It's characterized by choppy speech and the inability to form complete sentences. A person diagnosed with Broca's aphasia showcases speech that lacks normal fluency and rhythm and a hesitant, interrupted speech pattern. An example is shown to you in the next slide. And by this example, we can see how affected someone's fluency how affected a person's fluency is due to the disorder. And then this brings us to the question, what if it wasn't the fluency that was affected, but the comprehension itself? Well, shortly after Broca published his findings, 10 years to be exact, a German physician, Karl Wernicke, wrote about a 59-year-old woman he referred to as S.A. And she had lost her ability to speak, she had lost her ability to comprehend language. So then, after she died, Karl Wernicke, he determined that she had a damage in her left temporal lobe. This was because she offered absurd, almost nonsensical answers to questions, and she had trouble naming familiar items and used made-up words. And then the exact location of the Wernicke's area is still debated, although it's typically displayed as being near a large group known as the lateral sulcus, near the junction between the parietal and temporal lobe. Yes. So this area is believed to be unique to the function of language comprehension, and it's considered the receptive language center of the brain. Yes. So to better understand the damage of the Wernicke's area, I will show you I'll show you a small video clip to expand on this disorder further.
They're saying, well,
What's this?
the baby, Thank you, right there. End of the football.
And the football.
Is it influence the football right here? Because it comes in, see, at the end of it. Oh, yeah, that would be, see.
Thank you, Priya.
I don't know.
So what we can understand from studying both the Broca's and Wernicke's area is just how impactful these particular disorders play in the role of language processing in humans. But before I conclude my segment of the presentation, I would like you to know that this field of study is still relatively in its infancy, and the role of the Broca's and the Wernicke's area is still being elucidated even to this very moment. And so it would likely be expanded and modified upon in the years to come. And on that ambiguous note, I would like to invite my colleague Fazana to conclude the presentation. Thank you.
And now I would like to quickly summarize the key factors that we have discussed today. So looking into the first fact of spatial ambient temporal resolution, fMRI provides high spatial resolution by allowing the researchers to localize the brain activity to specific regions, while EEG offers excellent temporal resolution. Also, moving on to the second fact of dynamic and static measurements, fMRI and EEG monitor the brain activities during the linguistic activities that occur. And also, it records the real-time neural processes. Moving on to the collective impact. Let me consider the first fact. It deepens the understanding of language processes in the brain. It reveals the complex mechanisms of how the brain comprehends, and also it produces and processes language. Also, it is very easy to observe that the brain activity while individuals perform the language tasks. And also we could identify the specific regions of the brain which is associated with language processing. Moving on, so I would like to say that by mapping these, it helps to build a comprehensive understanding of how the brain's language network works. Moving on to the second fact. It elucidates the neural mechanisms underlying comprehension, production, and high-order linguistic functions. So this is about the more complex aspects of language, like understanding humor, or we would say like grasping abstract concepts and interpreting metaphors. So these methods allow to understand how this brain handles these language tasks. And I would like to conclude by stating that these technologies that we have discussed today continue to shed light on the link between the brain and the language that we have studied so far. And now it's time to open up for questions, and feel free to ask questions from our team.
Any questions? Right, so in what ways do post-mortem examination offer unique insights into structure and function of language-related regions compared to non-invasive methods like fMRI and EEG?
So, in postmortem methods, obviously it was one of the very first, and it was the oldest method. And although compared to the other ones, it's a bit archaic, it's also kind of, you get to feel the brain. It's very it's much more real than when you see it through a scan, because you have the actual brain with you. It isn't something that you get through a scan. And even if you see, let's say for example, Einstein's brain, like that particular group that was seen through the cannibal research was something that wouldn't have been as deep. The insight wouldn't have been as deep as something that you would have seen through fMRI or EEG. So in that way, we discovered that people made conclusions that maybe because of his high levels of intelligence, that there was a particular group, and that this was a discovery that was made through cannibal research. And once again, that's a autopsy. And so that provides a different insight,